Locked On Podcast Network and State Farm present Paving the Way, a new series highlighting important voices across Locked On's network. Every month, our host Kanani Stevens will showcase other Locked On hosts who come from underserved communities to hear the challenges they face to become a sports broadcast personality. Who will be paving the way this episode? Find out now.
State Farm believes it's important to champion diverse voices and create positive impacts in our neighborhoods. That's why our good neighbors at State Farm are proud to support the Paving the Way series and their mission to provide to underserved communities. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. This week, we talked to Jess Belmosto from Locked On Flames about how she came to cover a hockey team that she's passionate about from thousands of miles away. Joined by Jess from Locked On Flames for this edition of Paving the Way. Jess, so excited to have you with us today. I always like to kind of start out with how sports were a part of your life growing up, because some of us were, sports fanatics. Some of us picked it up a little bit later. Was sports always kind of your thing growing up?
Yeah, it was kind of just naturally integrated into my childhood growing up in Boston. My dad played every sport possible growing up, worked with the Bruins and the Red Sox for a little bit, and it just kind of really enforced the importance of sports and the teamwork element. And I was never athletic, so got to have a little bit more fun watching and learning the sport.
And it's a good time to grow up in New England because you had a lot of good teams to watch, so that made it a little easier, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, no, I was spoiled rotten with sports growing up. It was great. I loved it, and it's definitely something I don't take for granted.
Since you didn't play sports, when did you realize you wanted to do a little bit more than just watch sports? Is that something you went to school for, or how did that kind of come about? When did you realize that?
I was probably 19. So I took a gap year after high school and didn't really know what I wanted to do, and figured, I loved creative writing. I still do. And I had so many opinions about sports and all these different things that I was too nervous to start writing and sharing because, the nature of the internet. And then one of my coworkers was like, just write a blog, just do it. So it's probably been 7 or 8 years of since I started, and then I ended up going to school for public relations and really focusing on the sports element.
It's a hard thing to translate being a fan though into covering it, right? Obviously you have your opinions, but saying it in an eloquent way, getting that point across and then being taken seriously. So is that did you lean on school for that, or did you just kind of work it out as you started and figured it out?
Definitely both. I think that having the formal education and professors be okay, this is all good stuff, but you have to reword it and still make the same point, but just remove yourself from it. And it's definitely something that took a lot of work, but we got there eventually.
Yeah, eventually we get there. Who's someone that you maybe watched as a kid or someone you worked with along the way that kind of is someone that inspired you to kind of get into what you do now?
Yeah, so I watched Nesson growing up, New England Sports Network, every morning before school. And Hazel May was the desk reporter at the time. And she was so fun to watch and to really learn from and hear her talk about the game in a way that a 7-8-year-old kid could digest. And growing up with really all of the Nesson sideline reporters for the Red Sox was just so many brilliant women that have, gone on to do so many different things. And I really enjoyed learning from them. And I had a professor in community college who really was one of those people that pushed me to be okay, you want to write, you're going to do it. And I did.
Do you feel is it that kick in the butt maybe from your professor? I always felt sometimes it's you want to do something, but it's that little nudge you need, right? And whether it's your family or someone you work with or something like that, is that what your professor kind of did for you?
Absolutely. I think that, I was right on the verge of really, consistently putting out blogs, but I was like, no, not yet. The time's not right. And then my professor was like, can you just do this more consistently? It's fun for you and I enjoy reading it. So, don't hold yourself back and have, more confidence in the product you're putting out.
When you started your blog, did you focus on one particular sports, one team? Like, what did you kind of start out doing?
I started writing about the Red Sox. Baseball was definitely my number one focus. I tried to cover the entire league at one point and do like different player profiles or, talk about whatever news was happening. And eventually I started drifting more towards hockey just because I found myself watching it more and more and definitely having more opinions. And I wanted to share them.
Sure. Why not? Is that kind of, when you learn, not necessarily a new sport to you, but you start shifting to a different sport, is that kind of like a learning curve for you? Like trying to like study it's almost like you're studying them, right? Mm-hmm. So that you're knowledgeable when you talk about it.
Yeah, 100%. I really had to get familiar with the statistics and learning how to integrate them. And I'm not a numbers person at all. So, trying to figure out, what this one means, what that one means, and how to properly incorporate it. Definitely, it took some time, especially, in such a fast moving sport like hockey and as opposed to baseball.
Obviously, you're with Locked On Flames now. Did you follow a team before that, or how did it come about for you?
So I grew up watching the Bruins. I was always over at my grandpa's house, 7:05 for puck drop after dinner, and followed them all through high school and obviously still now. But back in 2020, when the Locked On NHL Network launched, I had a few friends that were hosting shows at the time, and I had just tweeted out. I was like, I'd love to host a show someday. Like, that's so cool. And I ended up getting a message, and they asked me to send in a little demo, and here are these two teams, the Columbus Blue Jackets or the Calgary Flames, and, pick which one. And I said the Flames. I thought that they, were a little bit better than the Blue Jackets. And really it came down to the jerseys. I think that they have the best jerseys in the league. So I was like, this is the unfortunate deciding factor here.
I think that's how the wise choices are made, because I feel like every time people win March Madness is when they pick the jersey colors or whatever that they like.
Exactly.
So this seems smart, really.
I'm glad you agree.
Going into podcasting, had you done that before, or was that like a big change? Because it's totally different than writing or any other really kind of media.
Yeah, so I had tried to have my own podcast, and a few of my friends have shows, so I definitely got experience talking on their shows and kind of figuring out the dynamics and what did and didn't work. But taking over a daily show was a very large feat, and it's something that I'm very proud of myself for doing and sticking with.
It's like learning to talk and have a conversation with yourself, which is so much harder than you realize. And then you didn't have a co-host, right? So you literally just learned to talk to a wall, sort of.
Yeah. And it was during the pause, right during lockdown. That's when I started right before the lockdown. So I was talking to myself 3 times a week, just into my computer, into my microphone. It was good practice.
Very good. When did you start to kind of figure it out, like, and have that fan base that kind of responds, and like realizing that, they kind of respect your opinion, and it's kind of a cool growth period because Locked On's grown so much recently?
Yeah, I think really it was probably the shortened season. So 2021, there were opportunities for me to go on to other Flames creators podcasts and, kind of pick their brain for ideas and have them on my show. And it was a time when obviously I'm still learning about the team and the whole like history and the dynamics of what their fan base has gone through for 40 long years. And, it was nice having that outside perspective on my own. But then when there's people in Calgary, they're like, no, like we see these players all the time at the mall. and just to be able to talk to them and get to know them more than just this quick intermission interview.
Is that something you adapt along the way? I always felt like when I first got into sports and journalism as a whole, it was really hard for me to be myself all the time. And obviously, as when you have a podcast, that's all you are, is yourself all the time. But also like trusting that other people want to listen to that, right? So that's kind of like learning about yourself too.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I feel like I just have this sense of humor that like it might not make everyone else laugh, but like I'll laugh at it. So when I do find myself laughing, I'm like, okay, I hope someone else gets like that pop culture reference, or they found this quip funny, or they enjoy it. I hope that's what they're getting something out of it.
Yes, hope they're laughing with us too. And I think a little bit for me too, I don't know, I want to speak for you, but as a woman as well, I always wanted to feel like I was super well researched, because you don't always get the benefit of the doubt, right? So it was hard for me I want to be on point and be really right about what I'm saying, but I also want to be myself.
100%. I think that was one of the biggest hurdles for me to kind of really tackle, I guess, at first was, not only am I a woman in sports, but I'm someone that has never seen the Calgary Flames play a game in my life. And to come at something correctly and approach it with not necessarily what everyone else is saying, but to not, have this adversary reaction just to have it and really know what I'm talking about. It definitely took some time.
Do you feel, I know we talked about some of your challenges, but when you were maybe starting or originally deciding what you wanted to do when you got out of college, how did this kind of come about? Like, was there anything that deterred you from it, or like what was the final push to kind of get going?
So I had just moved to upstate New York, and I just graduated community college, and I didn't know what I was doing. I had no idea. I knew that I needed to take some time off of school. I had just lost my dad, and I'd promised him like, hey, like I'll keep writing, I'll keep doing the whole sports thing. And it came into my life at such a perfect time that it felt so right. And to be able to grow as a person with the show, but to also watch the show blossom as well, has been really rewarding.
Jess, I couldn't tell you how many people I talk to that always, and it's true for me too, that's like Locked On comes around at the perfect time. And like, I know we probably sound like an ad for Locked On, but it really does.
Yes.
And then it's just different enough that it's just the push you need, right? Like we talked about before, whether it's your professor, whoever, just the nudge that you're like, oh, and it just takes you, are you surprised with where it's taken you? I mean, I am.
100%. I think that, number one, I never saw myself covering a team that's across North America. And to be able to have the opportunities that I've had to, talk with other professionals in the industry that I've looked up with, or looked up to rather, has been really just one of those moments where you just stand back and you're like, oh, I made the right choice. I'm doing the right thing. And it's just been incredibly rewarding, and, the hard work does pay off.
What's some advice, maybe if it's someone that wants to get into podcasting or getting into blogging, or, that's not quite sure yet, what's some advice you'd give for a younger version of yourself, maybe?
Oh my goodness. Probably, don't be afraid. And I know that sounds so cliche, but I wish that I had just trusted my gut and, posted a blog earlier, or maybe pursued covering an out-of-market team earlier. Just, take that risk. It's podcasting, it's writing, it's not surgery. No one's lives at risk. Just have fun.
That's good advice too. And especially because let's be honest, when you go back and look at your first anything, it's going to be terrible. It's going to be terrible. But the farther away you get from it, the funnier it becomes, as opposed to just being horrified.
Oh, yeah.
It. Like, do you ever go back and look at like your first blogs or anything like that, or listen to your first episodes of the pod and be like, what did I do?
Yes. I actually found a video in my Snapchat memories of recording like one of my first episodes, and I was like, oh, they really just let me have this show. And even though I talked in like fragments, it's fine. But now, I'm so much more confident in myself and what I'm, my knowledge. I just believe in myself, and it's world of difference.
Sure is. What have you been able to do? I know you're obviously covering a team that you didn't cover before, so just in everything seems kind of like a first for you. But what's something, lately with the pod, whether it's working with other hosts or like what's something you've done lately that's kind of cool and you didn't realize that it's grown to this level?
So last year I got to interview women's hockey gold medalist Rebecca Johnson, who actually works with the Flames. And that was just such a like, oh, wow, you're doing this and you're talking to someone that is like an Olympian. Like, this isn't just your friend on the other side of this Zoom call. Like, it's a literal Olympian. And it just kind of cemented that I'm doing the right thing, and taking that risk is so worth it. And, if you're ever worried about, oh, well, this person, they're not going to want to come on my podcast, the worst they can do is say no.
Right. Is it also like kind of proving yourself right too? Because I mean, you've learned so much and grown so much, right, in the past couple of years. Mm-hmm. So then when you get an interview like that, you can do that and it's not like overwhelming for you, right? It's like using the process
Definitely.
As well.
Definitely. I think it's just, again, one of those moments where you trust yourself, and it's kind of that, all right, you're doing something right, and someone's interested in talking with you. Like, they wouldn't just say yes to waste their time.
What's next on the docket? Like, what do you look at and you say, I really want to do that next, or I want to go there, or what's a new avenue you're looking at?
Well, I would say my next goal is to get credentialed for a game. The Canadian media is definitely a little bit more strict with their credentialing, which, I mean, I understand. It's, Canada's sport. So I definitely, that would be the next, I guess, like bucket list item, because again, that'd be like, okay, like I've proven myself to everyone that needs to see and approve this. And my goal is to eventually go out to Calgary and watch a game, even if I'm not covering it from the press box, but just be there and soak it all up.
There you go. You got to go early in the season probably, so you're not freezing to death, right? Is that the way
to do it,
or is it late?
Definitely.
I don't know which one's better.
I've heard fall is very nice in Calgary, and they have a lot of nice national parks out there. So
oh yeah,
make a nice fall trip.
There we go. I like that. Before we end this show, we did want to highlight an organization that we're working with in an effort to support paving the way for future generations faced with less favorable outcomes. State Farm and Locked On will be giving a donation to the incredible organization Everyone On for every host we feature on this series, and we'll do that for Jess today. The mission of Everyone On is to unlock opportunity by connecting families in underserved communities to affordable internet services and digital literacy training. Doing so creates significant positive change in communities and society as a whole. A big thank you to our good neighbors at State Farm for their support on behalf of our hosts and helping pave the way for so many others in our communities. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. State Farm and the Locked On Network share a common goal, helping to make our communities a better place. State Farm is committed to helping amplify individuals and organizations that lead the way in diversity, inclusion, and social good. Because we know that investing in community building and uplifting diverse voices is crucial to creating a sense of belonging. State Farm is proud to sponsor the Paving the Way series and celebrate the change makers that have paved the way in making our neighborhoods a better place for everyone. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.